What is going on, friends? Welcome to the Real Estate Virgins podcast. We are here to elevate your business in 2024 and beyond. My name is Jordan Brown at Jordan Sells ATX on Instagram, here with my co-host, John Michael Perez.
What's up, guys? At John Michael Perez on Instagram. Check me out on Facebook. We got a lot of cool stuff that we've been sharing and a lot of valuable stuff, too, that will help agents in their market. Brand new agents, experienced agents. Both Jordan and I have been doing it for a good while. Make well over six figures, and we've gone from $0 to making a decent income from real estate. And one cool thing about this podcast is that we're always willing to share. So anytime y'all have extra questions, please follow us on Instagram, because that's really where you're going to get a lot of value.
Yeah, we're here. If you're wondering what this podcast is all about, first of all, if you're a returning listener, thank you so much for coming back. We appreciate you guys tuning in. If you're a new listener and you're wondering what the heck the Real Estate Virgins podcast is, baby, you are in the right place. If you are looking for tactical tips and information based on either you're a new agent, you're an experienced agent, want to accelerate your business, scale up, implement new tactics, hear stories of success, stories of failure even. Not everything on the path to success is a hit. We have certainly gone through some of the growing pains ourselves and continue to share those wins and losses here on the podcast. And I personally love whenever we get to hear from other agents who have completely different paths. We've done some awesome interviews over the last few. So if you're brand new to the episode or to the podcast, go back, listen to our episode with Garth, with Herv was a great one. We've had a lot of really good content coming out within the last few weeks. We talked about the NAR settlement. So we got a lot of good stuff in the recent pipeline for you. Go check it out.
Hey, and one other thing, we've got some courses that we've been working on that should be coming out soon. So that's going to be extra value for you guys if you're ever looking to look at tactical courses where it's like, this is what we do to represent buyers at a high level, and not only represent those buyers, but convert them into referral partners and ambassadors for your business. So you're double, triple, quadrupling your business from one client. And so we've got some courses that we've been working on, as well as if you are in a position where you're looking for a team, we have a growing team that provides all those courses as well.
Nationwide, baby. We can help you wherever you're at.
Shout out to Omar, shout out to Kyle, shout out to Marlo, shout out to a lot of the agents that have been joining as of recently, and they're already seeing results. Kyle just got his first $750,000 listing.
Not a big deal.
And he's only been with us for a couple months.
Only been licensed for a few months too. I think that's what's really cool is, it's been cool to see the process where you land something or like you get licensed, and then there's this big now what question that comes up.
Yep.
And so whenever you work on a team such as ours, you get that guidance, which I think Kyle would tell you. I'm hoping I'm not putting words in his mouth, but I think Kyle would tell you that the guidance that he's received and the direction that he's able to get from us and from the group and from all the resources that we have here at the Wolfpack have helped him have a clear direction on how to not just service this client, but do it at a really high level.
Yeah. Story after story after story we're hearing, and it's really cool to see.
Yeah.
Yeah. But all right, let's get into this.
So what's been going on lately? We just had the eclipse yesterday.
It was pretty cool.
That was pretty cool. I hope, we have listeners from all over. Hopefully you got to catch a glimpse of it, or you were in the path of totality.
We all got mooned.
I've been seeing some really funny TikToks come out about this.
Yeah.
But it was
actually, a lot of these listeners may not have seen the eclipse because they're not in our area.
No, you're right. You're right. Really cool experience. I wasn't expecting a whole lot out of it, but for what it was, for the 4 minutes that it happened, I was like, hey, I'm glad I'm here. It was a cool experience. I had the wife and the kiddo. I was like feeding Landon while it was going on. So
were you in your backyard or something?
Yeah, yeah. Nice. So just to be able to, tell him when he gets older and show him pictures, it's gonna be really cool.
Yeah. Personal life, I just stopped 75 hard, and it's been a hard battle. I'm not gonna lie. Very mentally and physically exhausting, but I feel like I got a lot out of it. Lost a lot of weight, gained a lot of muscle, and but fitness is
Are you flexing right now? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I am. But you can tell, like, if you go back to some of the episodes, you can tell. But it is very hard. I mean, it's not called 75 hard.
It is a booger of a challenge for sure. Because I remember like just the first time I did it, and I wish I could get back on. I mean, I need to, because I feel like we've talked about it so many times on here, which I feel like whenever you're in that disciplined flow of state of flow where you're doing things you don't want to do, it's uncomfortable. It sucks to work out twice a day for 45 minutes at a time. But when you go through and you embrace it and you go, man, I really can do everything that I don't want to do. Yeah. It kind of puts you in a different mind frame. And I feel like the business just starts flowing. I think you mentioned earlier, like you're catching wind with your business where you're ramping up. And I don't think it's by any accident that it comes on the tail of doing 75 hard. So,
and that's the thing is, for me, I'm very, I'm successful when it comes to if I'm on a routine. But if I'm not on a routine, unfortunately, I see a downward spiral in my business.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard when you don't have the structure, because structure is such an important thing, because just like with anything, when you have too much freedom, it's tough, because when you're your own boss, you can become complacent, especially when you get a few closings in, you're like, all right, I can take the foot off the pedal for a little bit. But the discipline that comes in will say, even though I'm doing well, I need to continue, and I'm going to, keep the gas down. I'm gonna keep my foot down on the pedal and keep going and keep grinding, because we know that doesn't last forever.
100%. Now, here's the thing. Summer's coming up. We're in April right now. April, May, June.
Already.
July. Summer is coming up, guys. And the thing is as real estate agents, the harvest is about to be here. Right?
That's the hot time. Like if you don't know, if you're a brand new agent, summer is the absolute, supposed to be the craziest time of your business. And the reason behind that is kids are now going to be out of school. So you have a lot more buyers in the market who can make a move. You also have more listings hitting the market too, because those people who are rooted in that school district can now move freely as well. So it's good on all rounds. It's kind of a wash, because you have the people who are selling are going to need to buy somewhere else as well. So you're having increases in both the demand and the supply.
100%. Realtor.com just announced in an article that April, in the middle of April, is going to be the best time to list a home. And so as agents, you guys got to be, I personally did this. I shared that article with some clients and said, hey, it looks like we're right on the mark when it comes to listing the property. And so that actually remotivates them. Like, oh, okay, cool. Good timing. Right.
Well, so much of what we do is not even so much it's not like us that we're putting it out there for. It's for the clients. It's for the audience. Yeah. Because I did the exact same thing. I noticed that whenever I shared that article, some people inquired and were like, why is this? Yeah. Why is it that, the 14th through the 20th is the best time? Yeah. So then you get to have these more intimate conversations about what their goals look like and if it aligns with that listing or whatever. And it's all from an article that you shared, which you got on the internet for free.
Yeah. And if you don't know, if you're an agent and you don't know why things start ramping up, is because school's getting out, right? And so a lot of people don't want to purchase a house and move their kids into a new school district if
mid-year.
Yeah, mid-year. So
it's tough because, you're uprooting them. Kids are a big motivating factor. People buy because of school districts. They stay because of school districts. And so when you have a child who's in the middle of school, just because you find a house, like, that doesn't mean you're going to uproot them, take them away from their friends, put them into a whole new group where they don't know anybody. They don't know their teachers. It's really disruptive for a kid. So I understand why it's this time of year that things start to ramp up.
100%. So with that, when it comes to selling a home, a lot of I just wanted to share a few tidbits. One is there's really about 5 complaints that we get from buyers. When I'm listing a home and I get complaints from buyers, there's really 5 complaints that I really see. One is there's not enough lighting in the home, right? So these are tips that you need to be telling your sellers.
Yeah, take notes. This is going to be helping your conversations for if you have upcoming listings, how to help get them sold, because these are 5 most common complaints you're going to hear from buyers.
One is not enough lighting. So lighten up the dark spots within the room. You can use lamps like we're doing right here.
Yeah. Natural lighting's so popular.
Natural lighting.
So if you don't have that, you got to make up for it.
Open up those shades, open up those blinds. Number 2 is smells. So smells are extremely important.
Dogs, cigarettes, all things that take away from the experience of walking through a home.
Yeah. Number 3 is declutter, right? And so just try to declutter as many things as possible. I always tell people, and this sounds a little out there, but the less things in your home, the more opportunity for a higher offer, in my opinion, because people want to see the home as their home, not as someone else's home. So if your stuff is in the house that you're selling, they can't really imagine their stuff in that home, right?
And ideally, your listing or your client on the listing side is utilizing either they're already in their next home or they're utilizing a local storage place. And if you can't do that, use the garage. Of all places in the house, everyone kind of can predict what a garage looks like. That's not your major selling point. So utilize that space if you're going to need to hide your stuff somewhere or to store your stuff somewhere.
Yeah. And then outdated design, right? And so when you've got like old school stuff in a house and you've got these young buyers or people that are looking for more modern aesthetic things, you're just going to turn them away from your home, right? And so some easy fixes for that is hardware, right? Just change out your hardware on the cabinets.
Neutral paint colors.
That is super helpful for sellers, and it'll create more opportunity for better offers. And
I noticed whenever I think a few weeks ago, I talked about this 1910 build house that we were looking at and that we were under contract on. Mm-hmm. That house, because of its age, it fit really well with this wild color palette. It had like the really rich Merlot color on the walls, this really rich like sage green on the walls, but it felt super homey. But it felt appropriate for the type of house that it was. And nowadays, like in our area, there's so much new construction that happens that everything kind of feels like it's in this black, white, gray color palette.
Yeah.
So if that's what your competition is, if that's what the trends are right now, you need to keep that in mind. Wood tones. I've noticed like wood tones are starting to come back a little bit. Okay. You've got, colored cabinets are kind of in right now, like the green cabinets. I've seen blue cabinets. I'm seeing people do that again.
Yeah.
And as long as it's done tastefully, I think it actually really highlights the house.
100%. And then the last one, I agree with you on everything you just said. The last one is just to clean, obviously, to clean as much as possible, especially if you have dogs or cats or pets. A lot of times we can't tell because we've been living in the house, right? Like where there's, I don't know, fur or hair or, even on the ceiling fans. And going back to smells, make sure you maybe have a candle or a plug-in, right? But cleaning as much as possible. And like Jordan said, if you have too much stuff, just put it in the garage because buyers know that you're planning on moving out. So they're not going to care if the garage is full of things.
Good tip for open houses. Bringing a candle, maybe doing some cookies. If you have permission from the homeowner, you can bake cookies there. Whenever you appeal to people's senses, it helps them feel at home. It takes them to a comfortable, like when I think about the smell of like chocolate chip cookies, I think of nothing but happy times in my life.
100%.
And it's almost like a psychological trick whenever potential buyers are coming through that they're associating good feelings with the house.
I like that.
It's good stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah.
One thing that that I wanted to mention is that in our market, one thing that I'm having a little more conversation about, we've seen it in a listing that you and I co-listed together. Some sellers are getting a little antsy. They're thinking that things are going to be better next year.
Yeah.
What's your take on that? And what is your advice or warning to agents that are having conversations like this? A little more backstory. We listed this property. We brought a full price offer on the property, and the seller said no. They said they want to wait until the next year because they think things are going to be better. So the thing that they're probably hoping for, right, is a higher asking price, B, more competition that then raises the price. for one reason or another, the conditions that they're waiting on is that it's going to be better next year than this year. What's your take on that?
I think with that listing in particular, we probably, and this is probably my fault, just had better expectations from the very
Like
beginning.
up front.
Yeah, you know.
Because if you would tell almost anyone, hey, if I bring you a full asking price offer, they're probably going to accept it.
Yeah, that's something I just assumed.
Yeah.
Right? Like, if I'm going to bring you a full price offer, you're going to accept. Rarely is someone going to say no. You know? But that's a good reason to always have clear expectations on both sides of the, you know, me representing them and them being represented by me. Right.
Yeah.
And so,
So it's like, hey, are we listing here to try to get to this point and that's where you need to be? Or are you listing here because that's what you need?
Yeah.
Because that also helps us understand moving forward what you're actually going to entertain and what you're not.
Exactly. You know, I have another listing coming up next week, and she said, hey, we'd love to get, you know, we'd be happy with 430, but can we try 440, right? And I'm like, you know, let's do it, right? Because I think it could sell for 440, but there might be a chance where we get offers in at 430, right? So as long as those expectations are there and she's still happy, you know, then we're good to go. We'll move forward. But then also always having that conversation and saying, hey, if we don't get 440, are you prepared to make a price reduction within a few 2 to 3 weeks later, just to make sure that we're in line with what we think it will sell for? You know? And having that conversation at the before you even list, before you even get listing documents signed. And if you get a listing document signed, change it up, you know, if you have to. But those conversations are super important. And a lot of brand new agents don't want to have those conversations because sometimes it's a little awkward, but I'm telling you guys, you're going to save so much time and so much money if you have the hard conversations before you list the home.
Yeah.
Or before you help a buyer buy a home, right?
And there's a lesson in there. It's that everyone's goal can be different. You know, there's different tactics for selling a home, whether it's quickly, for top dollar, both. Like whatever the need is for this particular client is how you're going to formulate what your asking price is and how you market it.
Yeah. I mean, we had a really deep conversation before this podcast, and I'm going to share that story real quick. But so I went out to eat with some people on our team, good friends of ours, Roberta and Joey, and my wife and our kids. And this waiter came up to us and she said, hey guys, you know, are y'all ready to order? And I asked her and I said, yeah, what is your favorite thing on the menu?
Which you always do.
Yeah. And she goes, well, my favorite thing, I'm not going to recommend it because it's one of the more expensive things on the menu, right? And I'm thinking to myself, what does that matter, right? Like, she's assuming from her lens of that perspective that I'm not going to want that steak that's $41, right? I'm like, I might want that steak, right? Mm-hmm. So she recommended something else. And her lens of that entire conversation, she missed out on selling something even more expensive because of her perspective, right? And so her expectations of how she thought I was going to order was different than how I actually was going to order. And so a lot of times we go into these transactions or relationships with our expectations and based off of what we think they're going to think, when in reality, their expectations may be way different than ours. So we have to have those conversations of questions of what is your goal before we give those expectations, right?
It really makes you wonder. I wonder how many missed opportunities or opportunities to do something different that I've done based on my perspective of what other people's perspective is.
Yes.
What my opinion on your thoughts of me it would be. And it's so true. I mean, we, like you said, we talked about this before the pod in a private convo about
missed out on opportunities just based off of what what our thoughts were of their perspective.
And then I don't do that with other people, but yet I do it to myself, which is an interesting thing. I think it goes back to the general quote of we're our own worst critics, right?
Yeah.
And so we go, well, that person does it because they're special. And then we look at, there's a person that we know who is a killer who doesn't know everything about everything. And we'll ask questions, and then you're like, wow, like I would expect that they knew like my perspective was that they knew everything.
Yes, based off of their results.
Correct. And it's not always the case.
Yeah.
So good insights there. Be easier on yourself and celebrate your successes. Like there's a lot of mini lessons in there. Where, it's okay to feel good that you're the professional in this industry as well. I think we second guess a lot just because we don't have results of someone else. And the comparison is what makes us feel that we're not worthy of those thoughts.
Ooh, yeah.
Which is tough.
Yeah. Comparison makes you not feel worthy of those results or those.
But to someone else, you're in the position they want to be in.
Yep.
So they will listen to you, which is just a very interesting, like I don't have, just put in a real practical scenario. I have 14 mentees with us within my mentorship program. And I think about it sometimes and I go, man, I sure hope like the things that I'm providing to them are valuable. I hope that, I get in my own head about, there's people with 10 times, 100 times the results that I have. Why would anyone want to listen to me? But then I think about it and I go, you know what? Like I am successful in my own right. I have made a path of freedom, getting away from the corporate job that I hated and providing for my family. And so I'm in a position that people want to be in. And it's okay to embrace that position and not feel like doubting myself, because then I get the encouragement from them when they say, man, this really helped me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, cool. Awesome. You sure you're all good? Like, yeah, that's my own, I struggle with that a lot.
Yeah. Sometimes we are our worst critics, and sometimes we have to reinforce our own beliefs based off of not comparing ourselves to other people. And also, it's really good to hear someone else tell you that your advice worked or your perspective worked,
Well, I think that's the thing, is that we want to, when we're like helping people, a lot of times the result happens and you just don't get the positive affirmation. Hey, this helped me. And so when you do get it, you're like, that feels so good.
It does.
Yeah.
I know. I agree.
But and the cool thing is that we like in the way that we're set up, our group, we get to see it.
Yeah.
We get to see it. Everyone celebrates their successes. I think it's really cool that we lift everybody up.
At no additional cost.
Yeah. So, if you're wanting a little bit of that, come on in. So moving on, realtor.com, best week is going to be April 14th to 20th to list your home. Mortgage rates are not accounted for since they're more focused on the seasonal changes and not the greater economic condition. We are moving into a segment where we're going to talk about some hard lessons for first-time agents or agents who are just brand new to the business. Because, man, I remember getting licensed and I had my rose-colored glasses on. It's going to be the easiest thing ever. HGTV made it look so good. Everyone's going to want to work with me. I'm going to make $1 million tomorrow.
It's probably going to get harder, actually.
And yeah, so with this settlement, I mean, things have been pretty cushy for. I say cushy. It's still been very entrepreneurial. It's just things are going to change on the backs of the settlement that we talked about a few episodes ago.
And here's the thing, it is April right now. I feel like it hasn't even been approved, so it may get pushed back. It might not even be this year.
Like John and I were saying, like all this speculation that we've talked, like John and I have done our reaction to it. We've talked about possible solutions, but man, until something is actually changed or like in place, it's all just fictional. It's all hypothetical. So until then, it's business as usual.
Yep.
and capitalize on the things that have been working for you right now as much as you can until you hear otherwise.
Yeah.
That's really it. So hard lessons for beginning agents. I know a lot of agents who their first year, they do a lot of leases, and leases can be horrible to deal with. And here's why. Feel free to chime in on this. I feel like you do just as much, if not more work for a fraction of the pay on leases, because you're typically dealing with someone who isn't qualified to buy a home and they're renting for a reason.
Well, do you hear recently renting is actually, if I'm not mistaken, is as of recently renting is cheaper. You'll get more house by renting now, and which is, I think it's been the case, but sometimes it hasn't.
Well, when interest rates were 3%, if you could get a house, like you could have a great home with, almost, if not the rate for rent, it would be just a little bit more.
Yeah.
That's distance itself a little bit.
Yeah.
Renting is absolutely cheaper than owning right now. Make no mistake about it. Yeah. And if you're spinning it that it's not, you seem very tone deaf, and your audience,
unless you have a big down payment, maybe.
Correct. If you're paying like half of it down, or if you're, which is a whole other scenario, but typically if you're like 90+% of the population, I don't know the actual stats on that, I just made it up, but I would just assume that most people are not putting a down payment more than 20%.
Yeah. Okay. So let me give you my perspective, different lens, since we keep saying that. First year did 19 leases. And then the second and third year, out of those 19 leases, 7 of them became buyers and sellers. I'm sorry, just buyers.
Yeah.
And so I will say, if you're just getting into real estate, they are harder. However, if you're motivated to do the work, then it might be worth it. However, pre-qualifying those leases and leasees or those clients from the very beginning, like
we talk about conversations up front.
Yeah.
It's hard. Like, it's uncomfortable. A lot of times you get a new lead and you just want to be like the first one to help them, but you can waste a lot of your own valuable time if you don't figure everything out up front.
Yeah. So 4 questions I ask are, do you have about a 600 credit score? Because most landlords are going to require that. Sometimes they're a little bit more lenient, like 580, 550 sometimes. Then 2 is, do you have proof of income? And so can you prove within the last few months that you've actually made income? 3, do you have any broken leases? And then 4, what is your time frame, right? And then if they pretty much answer all 4 of those questions, then I will go ahead and move forward and start doing leases. I don't do leases anymore because I don't have to. However, if you're a brand new agent, it might be a good thing to at least start building that pipeline with leases. It's a lot of work. It is a ton of work.
And for not a lot of reward. That's the thing, is you have to be okay. It's planting seeds. That's the biggest thing. So for example, the reason that this is even on this list is I just had a call this morning with my mentees, and one of them shared some feedback. I had 55 inquiries on a lease listing of mine, and all but 3 were unrepresented. I could not field all those myself, so I started divvying them out to the team. Anyone who wanted the lease leads, I was giving them to them so that they could follow up and close them themselves. Some of the feedback I got is, wow, leases are hard. Because, and I think it's just because, again, the criteria or like the clientele have a little bit tougher situations. Some of them has to do with either income, with credit score, with pets. Like one of them, they had a felony, and so like that's tough to deal with. But you want to help because you want to be the person that like fixes the issue that they're running into, right? We're trying to get a lease, we're not having any luck. Oh, well, let me help. Well, there's maybe a reason that they're not, getting a lease on their own.
Yeah, they're time suckers for sure.
But then, just like you said, one of those conversations that she had, they're talking about buying next year. So they're going to lease out for a year, save up, get a good down payment. Boom, they'll be buy clients in a year. So plant the seeds. It's not always about the immediate money, because you know why? I've said it on this podcast before. I need money today, like I need it tomorrow, like I need it next year, and 5 years down the road.
Yeah. I remember one time showing a lease, and I actually converted them to a buyer. And the reason why I did that was I was like, I did those pre-qualifying questions at the very beginning, and I said, yeah, I just need to know about how much are you able to afford, 3 times rent? Oh yeah, I make $1 million a year. Oh, okay. Do you know, is your credit score X amount? Yes. Do you have any pets? Blah, blah, blah. Well, I showed them a few houses, leases, and then throughout the time that I was showing them those houses, I was building rapport as well. And I said, well, you know what? It might be a good idea to actually purchase in Hutto right now. This is back in 2019, right?
When it was like farmland.
Yeah, I was like, it might be a good idea to purchase right now because this area is moving. This area is growing very fast. And they're like, you know what? Let's go ahead and take a look at that. And so, hey, there's opportunities out there. You just got to ask the right questions. If you don't ask the right questions, you're looking at it from one perspective. You're missing out on that $41 steak sale.
We call that selling out of your own pocket.
Yes.
Yeah. One of my old corporate job that I love talking about on here, that was my biggest thing that I took away from there is just because I wouldn't pay $80 for a phone case doesn't mean that this client won't pay $80 for a phone case. Nope. So if I don't ask the questions because I'm thinking I already know the answer, then you're correct. You already know the answer. It's no. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, just imagine. I mean, how many times has she not recommended that steak? And over a period of 3 years, never recommended that steak. But if she did, at least 2 out of 10 would have taken it, right? Mm-hmm. Over 3 years, she missed out on. And the thing is the steak cost $16 more than whatever I ordered. I think what I ordered was like 23. I don't know, 25. That's what you tip on, right?
Yeah.
You tip on
typically
what the sale price is. And so
how much of gratuity has she missed out on because she's afraid to recommend the product that she really likes?
Exactly.
Yeah. No, 100%. It's a funny way that works. And what's cool about your scenario that you just outlined is it lined up perfectly for that client, right? Because they got in right before the pandemic. Now they have, I guarantee you, they've got at least $100K worth of equity, if not
double.
Yeah. So good on them for listening to you, taking the risk. In this down market, there's deals out there. I think that's the exciting thing. We're going to cover a little bit later the top 10 markets that are down right now, currently in 2024 so far. Mm-hmm. Where the deals are at, but we'll get into that a little bit later.
Okay.
Another hard lesson for new agents is that business just doesn't come to you. We talk about it all the time, that you just get licensed. You think everyone that you know who suddenly goes, John's a realtor now. I trust that guy. I'm going to work with him. It doesn't happen that way. I've had clients use me for certain parts of a transaction, and they knew I was new, so they didn't trust me with other parts. I've lost out on money that way. I've had people who I feel like I easily could have earned that business not use me because they had existing relationships. There's so much involved in this industry. Some of my best friends moved from here and moved to a different state. And I thought for sure I could have been their realtor, and I think I would have done a really good job. At that point in time, I could have just planted a freaking sign in the yard. I would have sold it for whatever it sold for.
I wanted to buy that house too.
Yeah, it was a nice one. But I respected the hell out of the fact that they said, we would use you, but our last realtor did so good for us, and she's helped us with a few transactions, and she's gone above and beyond. And I actually respected that. Because if I was that realtor and I went above and beyond, and some jabroni just got his license is going to take that client from me, I'd feel some type of way about it too. So I respect it. But you're fighting against so much stuff. You're fighting for attention. You're fighting against iBuyer programs. You're fighting against anyone who's marketing. Anyone that they know. Because on average, I think the stat is something like every person knows like 7 realtors. Yeah. That's crazy.
Crazy.
So anyway, business doesn't just come to you. You gotta go fight it. You fight for it, earn it, and scale it.
Hey, I'm going to do this a little bit out of out of order, but guys, I am wearing a Buc-ee's t-shirt right now. And if you are subscribed to us on YouTube, you'd be able to see that. So guys, one thing I would like to say is like, if you haven't yet, go subscribe on YouTube because that's a great place to look at our beautiful faces as well.
You can see how ripped John's got
Yeah.
from 75 Hard.
Hey, you know what? And I'll give you 10 free video scripts. I'm not going to give you all of them as suggested by Jordan before this podcast, but I'll give you 10 free video scripts that convert leads into clients.
Dang, just for subscribing.
Well, you got to comment too. So subscribe and comment just to let me know. Just say something, and then I'll get you over to those 10 video scripts.
That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah. All right.
Cool.
Next thing.
So the final thing that as a new agent, you might uncover as something that's kind of a hard truth or like a hard lesson that you can prepare yourself for. It's that real estate's one of the only businesses where people will ask for a portion of your commission.
Oh, it's so annoying.
Like, I don't go anywhere else. I don't go to Chipotle. And the guy like that's putting the chicken al pastor, which thank God that's back. It's so delicious. I don't ask him. I'm like, hey, I'll get you to put the chicken on there for me if I can get 30 cents from you. But real estate, for some reason, we are on the table for people to be like, hey, I'll use you. Like, you have a personal story with this here recently.
Yeah, it's annoying. But I mean, here's the thing. I'm looking at, I'm taking my own advice. I'm taking my own advice. And yes, things are negotiable. So, but at the same time, it just sucks that
It's not even so much that I'm off the table of being negotiable. It's just rude. Yeah. I think that's my biggest thing is like for someone on...
What's a non-rude way to approach that and be negotiable?
Well, I feel like if you're... Well, first of all, I have to put myself in the mind frame of someone who's coming into this, right?
Yeah.
The reason I would initially reach out to you is because I feel like I know, like, and trust you based on our past dealings. Maybe I found you on the internet, found you in a video, and I want to work with you. Yeah. You seem like the local expert. That's who I want to work with. That comes with a value that I don't think justify. Like, I don't think that everyone gives you that. Yeah. You know, well, so it's like
my thing is if it's the first thing you ask, like
it's setting a bad precedent for the rest of the transaction, honestly.
Yeah, I agree.
But it's tough. I mean, I think the main point is that you just have to prepare for it. I don't think there's a single person in the industry who's been in this longer than 3 years who will tell you that they've never once been asked for a portion of their commission, either to save a deal or from the rip just to represent you. It's up for you to debate with yourself how much leeway you have with that. Because part of me, I mean, I'm not gonna say no automatically. I want to justify like, great, you know, hey, I'm open to discussing why do you feel this way, or what is it that you're expecting me to do in return, or maybe something that I'm giving up in return. What does that look like to you? Oh, well, our last realtor did it. Okay, well, tell me a little bit more about that transaction. Like what led to that, or whatever the point is.
I think a question I asked this person that asked for a rebate is, what expectations do you have of me?
Yeah.
Right? And so if those expectations are less than the service that I normally give, then I guess we'd be good to go.
Like, hey,
if I'm just here to sign a contract and then just overview it and make sure everything goes smoothly, yeah, sure, let's do it.
And that's my point, is I'm not going to automatically say no, because I mean, this, depending on the price point, it could be well worth my time.
I'm not going to give you weekly updates and constantly.
I'm not driving out there and giving you pictures of slab updates and no, we're starting off like this.
Yeah, I'm not wasting hours upon hours every week. If you're asking for half of my paycheck.
But I mean, hey, at a certain point, again, maybe at certain price points, that conversation is a lot easier to have.
Yeah, I mean, it just depends on, and then you have to sort of tailor your service, right? Maybe you're more of a consultant at that point, right? And you're not hands-on. You're just a consultant. Call me anytime, 24/7, or whatever within your work hours. I'll be able to answer questions.
I was going to say, if someone's asking for a piece of my commission, I go above and beyond for my regular clients. But if you're someone who's starting, like, if clearly you're money motivated, right? Yep. You're not seeking me out for my relationships. You're not seeking me out because I'm going to give you stellar service. You're seeking me out because you want a rebate. Yeah. That's what it is. So I'm okay with that to an extent. Don't expect the same treatment as my people who truly value what I bring to the table as an agent.
Yeah. Don't expect guacamole without paying extra.
Yeah. Because the guac is extra and so am I.
I'm guacamole.
So yeah, no, I totally agree. Like, I'm probably not going to answer your questions at 9 p.m. like I would for a normal client. Mm-hmm. You're going to wait until I'm good and ready in the morning. You're going to wait till I've had my coffee. Yep. And I've knocked out my meetings. Yeah. So we're talking about a difference here in the level of service and importance.
I've serviced my full paying clients.
Yeah, 100%. Just prepare for it. It's going to happen, whether it's happened or not in your career so far.
Hey, and we're not telling you to do any certain thing. That's just what we do.
No, it's just thought provoking. It's one of those things where if you haven't ran into it, you don't want the first time that you think about it to be when someone's asking it to you. It's the same thing we had in the last talk where we talked about all these things that we take for granted that we do as buyer's agents specifically. Yeah. Because selling a home is a lot more hands-on versus the buying process is a little more people don't understand what all goes into it. Yeah. But you can kind of get an idea of what goes into listing a home. Yeah. And so now it's like, no, I'm going to highlight all these things because it's what I bring to the table. It's what I do that people take for granted. But anyway, discussion for a different day. You can hear that on the last episode if you're interested in hearing more about that.
We've got a pretty good episode coming up. We've got I don't want to say.
We got a second date with Suman.
Second date with Suman. Yeah. Sue the man Kim.
Suman the human. That's how
Suman the non-human.
Yeah.
Because he's just doing superpowers.
Transaction machine, man.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Let us know, hey, if you're listening, if you've listened this far and you are excited to hear from Suman. It was by far our best episode up until recent. Lots of value. I mean, it's what got us intrigued in working with him.
Most listened to episode up until recent.
Yep. So if you want any of your questions answered, if you have something that you want us to ask Suman for you, DM John or myself or our at Real Estate Virgins podcast Instagram. Leave it on the YouTube comment, wherever. We're super excited to sit down, get some time with him again so that you guys can learn from one of the best in the business.
One of the best for sure.
Absolutely.
It's unheard of.
One last thing before we send you off. Have you guys maybe been interested to know what the most depreciated markets in 2024 are? Where are the deals, Jordan? Clients are asking all the time, where is affordable property? Where has it gotten better since last year? And I am going to pull up that one. It is according to the New York Post and Go banking rates, which I'm pretty sure are tied together because the articles look almost exactly the same. You tell me, what are some places that you think are on this list based on what you've been seeing and hearing?
Depreciated?
Yeah. So in 2024 so far, what markets are the most down just this year?
Is Austin one of them?
No. Good guess. I was actually surprised that Austin wasn't, but it makes sense because last year we were the number one most depreciated in 2023 at 19%. Nashville is not on here.
Okay.
All right, I'll just tell you. Portland, Oregon is number 10. They are down, and I'm just going to give you the least depreciated on this list and the most depreciated as far as the percentages. Portland, Oregon is down 1.2%. San Francisco, California, no shocker there.
Oh yeah.
San Antonio, Texas, the only Texas location in this list.
Go Texas.
Raleigh, North Carolina, San Jose, California, Denver, Colorado, Kansas City, Missouri, Cincinnati, Ohio, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, and number 1, Miami, Florida, down 8.2%.
We'll be in Miami.
Yeah, we will. EXPCon, baby. I tell you one thing, EXP knows how to throw a party. That's what I learned at EXPCon last year.
Yeah, pretty crazy. Cool. So most depreciated Miami, huh?
Well, I know that Florida I mean, if you talk to anyone from Florida, I listened to another podcast called Spittin' Chicklets. They interview hockey players from all over the league. And there was a guy who mentioned when he went to Florida, he got traded to Florida. He bought a home instead of rented. And he was so glad he did, because then the pandemic happened. Oh, yeah. And he said, I sold it for almost double what I bought it for. He was like, that shouldn't, even he said, that shouldn't happen. And so that just tells you what Florida's been experiencing for the last few years. So no shock they're on the list of coming down in value.
Yeah. I feel like we're in for I still feel like there's a lot of buyers on the sidelines, especially if I think we're bottoming out pretty much, in my opinion.
We just need one bit of good news.
For real.
Buyers need something to go their way right now. I think that the toughest part about where we're in right now, and I talk about this with one of our lenders right now, the reason that this market feels so tough is, think about the pandemic. It still favored a couple of the sides. You could get a 3% interest rate if you were a buyer. That was appealing.
Yeah.
If you were a seller, you could sell your house almost instantly with almost zero chance it falls through.
Yeah.
For 50, 100, 250, whatever it was, over asking price. It felt great to be a seller in that market. When things started to shift a little bit, inventory started to hit the market, interest rates went up just a little bit. You were around like 4 or 5%. Buyer demand was still really strong. So it felt like a really good time to be a buyer.
Yeah.
Now there's so much competition on the listing side because everyone's selling their houses, but buyers are in a tougher spot because interest rates are at 7+%.
I'm worried that this is going to become a renter nation and nobody's going to own. Everyone's going to.
There's a big bit of chatter out there about, I want to say, was it last year?
BlackRock.
44% of homes were bought by private equity firms.
That's crazy.
That's nuts. That means almost half of the homes that were sold last year were not people like you and me.
Yeah.
It was from corporations. And I have seen it go around where they're, the rumor is, or the big conspiracy, let me put my tinfoil hat on real quick, is that they want to make a nation of forever renters, where they will own the property. There's a big quote out there that says, you will own nothing and you will be happy. And some people in the industry seem to think that that's what they're aiming for.
Well, you never really do. I mean, never really do fully own something. You always have to pay at least maintenance,
property taxes. Yeah.
I know in Europe, most people are renters because they've just, if I'm not mistaken, you guys might correct me, but I've heard that a lot of people already own the properties. So if anybody, it's hard to purchase new properties because something like that.
Well, do you know who Jeanette McCurdy is? She was a child actor on iCarly, and I think she dated a basketball player. There's a big thing about that.
I saw what you're gonna say. Yeah.
So she was on a podcast, and she talked about how she owned a home for a little bit, and
she barely owned it though. She owned it for a year.
Correct. Regardless, she hated it. She hated the experience of owning a home. She said, "Now I live in an apartment." And any of my maintenance needs are taken care of. So it is interesting that there's pros and cons to everything. That's why we always say that everything that you do is on a case-by-case basis. You will never have two different clients that have the exact same scenario, the exact same desires, the exact same setup. Everything is so hyper individualized when you're buying, renting, selling a home.
I'm going to summarize this real quick because I don't want to go too deep into it, but I have a client that purchased a house and they're like, man, this is way too expensive than I thought. And then this person lost their job and then a lot of circumstances. Unfortunately, the monthly payment is substantially more than what it would rent for. And so we're like, oh man, what do we do? Upside down basically. And,
which if you bought in the last 2 years, very easy to be in a position of being upside down right now.
Yeah, and so quiz, Jordan, you're going to know the answer because I've already talked to you about it. What do you do in that situation?
Well, for this particular client, you were looking at a seller finance option.
Correct. Why?
Seller financing is flexibility. There's a few different benefits to it. One, if you're the seller, you can make it to where you control the terms, which is really cool. You may be more attractive because let's say they have a 5% interest rate and rates are 7% right now. You can charge that same 5% interest rate or whatever payment you need to cover it. And that looks more attractive to a potential buyer than paying whatever the price is at a higher interest rate.
Yeah,
So
a lot
that's
of
one
people
option.
are scared of seller financing, especially real estate agents. I'm so disappointed.
I think it's just because they don't understand
They
it.
don't understand it, and they think that real estate agents aren't going to get paid from it, which is absolutely not true.
Yeah.
You absolutely just as a FYI, you get paid if you put it in the deal, right? And so,
It's always what does the contract say? That's at the end of the day. That's what does the contract say?
yeah. So rents go for I'm gonna fudge up numbers. If rents go for $2,500 and the mortgage is $3,200, then maybe switch up the interest rate. If you're seller financing, you control the terms, right? So switch up the interest rate. In this situation,
Maybe with like larger down payments, you get lower interest rates.
yeah.
Cool creative financing that you can get within there.
And then now pretty much you release you're not losing $500, $600, $700, $800 a month, and someone else is paying over that mortgage. And then also another tip is what's called a balloon payment. And so you could do a 30-year term, you can do a 20-year term. But if you choose to add a balloon payment, you can still do that 20, 30-year term, which is basically means the payments are amortized within a 30-year term. However, if you want to do a 10-year balloon payment, so it's amortized for 30 years, but it needs to either be paid off in 10 years or needs to be sold within 10 years, right? And so that way you lessen your liability for the whole 30 years.
Yeah. So the balloon payment basically brings that last 20 years of what's due to that 10-year mark.
And it pops.
Yeah.
Yep.
One cool benefit to that, if you're the seller, is if the buyer messes up, they don't oblige by the payments or whatever's agreed upon, you can actually retain everything that they've paid up to that point.
Yep.
And they are now in violation of that contract. That's also partly maybe what scares people away from seller finance is the possibility where, foreclosure may take 6 months to process versus a balloon payment or missing a payment on a seller finance deal could kill it if they wanted to. So
yeah. Well, that's the beautiful thing about real estate is there's so many creative ways of figuring out solutions to problems.
Yeah.
And seller financing is one great solution to a lot of people that are maybe upside down on their property.
I'm seeing it a lot more in the last, few months for sure. Seeing a lot of seller finance, a lot of off market stuff going on. So
Also real estate agents, if you have a client that is upside down on their property, maybe it's a good idea that you purchase it seller financing, right? Maybe.
there's win-win solutions in there. I talked to a mentee about this where if you have the means to be able to cover that for them, like there's a way for it to be a win-win because I think the problem with the perception, again, the lens of people who buy properties from other people is they look at it as you're taking advantage of a situation. I bet if you were to ask that seller who is distressed, they'd say, you saved me from a terrible situation.
From a foreclosure, which would
Yes.
ruin their lives.
Yeah. So there's all kinds of ways that you can provide solutions. You can get creative with it. I love that, the part of the industry that we're in is problem solving. You're a problem solver for your clients. There's tons of ways to be able to do that, whether it be with financing, with, solutions for payments like 2-1 buy downs, 3-1 buy or 3-2-1 buy downs, permanent buy down incentives. You can go into any side of the transaction. There's ways to get creative and be the rock star and save your client, get the deal done that is advantageous to them.
And if you want to know more about that, follow us on Instagram.
I think that's a good place to end it. Do you have anything you want to close us out with?
Love you guys. Super thankful for you guys listening. All of this is free, 100% free. Hopefully it was valuable. If you got anything from this episode, please give us a like, subscribe on YouTube, follow us on Instagram, and we would be very much appreciative of that.
Yeah, a couple of things. Again, thank you so much for listening. 2, we got the episode with Suman coming soon. And if you want us to ask questions to Suman,
Coming soon.
come. We are going to take your questions. We'll ask it to Suman here on the podcast. And if you just have any questions in general, whether it's for Suman or not, if there's anything that we're discussing that you go, man, I wish I knew a little bit more about this, feel free to reach out to us. We're always fielding our inboxes for content to be able to discuss, because we know that all of our situations are different. Yep. We're at different points in our careers, and we can learn from each other. So we love you guys. Thank you so much for listening. If you found any of this valuable, give us a like John said, a subscription, anything that we could do to earn your business. It's a free, easy way to support the podcast. We'll catch you guys in the next one.